Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here, and it's time for another reaction request. If you have a video that you'd like me to react to, check the description below. There's a link that'll take you to a Google document with all the relevant information. So today we're going to be looking at a video from Summoning Salt, who is a creator that I reacted to, I think, once before. And that video was about speedrunning. I think Pokemon? It's a Pokemon speedrun. I don't know if this will also be about speedrunning because the title of this video does not make that clear. The title of this video being The Quest to Beat Jimmypoopins. I don't know. Just given the content I've seen in the past, I'm assuming that yes, this probably is a speedrunner we're trying to beat. But there's no indication of the game, or if that is indeed the case. Because all I know is we're trying to beat someone calling themselves Jimmypoopins. Yeah. Yeah, I gotta hear this story. Let's go ahead and get into it. There's nothing else to really say beyond Jimmypoopins, but here we go.
This video contains flashing lights that may affect viewers with photosensitive epilepsy. Viewer discretion is advised. It's February 9th, 2016. Huh? Somewhere on a live stream deep into the pages of Twitch, a player begins a run of Ninja Gaiden 2.
Okay.
But this isn't just any
I actually never played a Ninja Gaiden game.
This is Jimmypoopins, the world record holder for Ninja Gaiden 2.
Okay.
And the run he's about to perform is going to go down in speedrunning history. See, Jimmy is more than just the record holder. He is by far the most dominant runner this game has ever seen. In fact, at this point, he might be more dominant than any other NES speedrunner. For years, Ninja Gaiden 2's world record was in the 1020 to 1030 range. But when Jimmy came along in 2014, the world record started to plummet. And for the last year, he's been on a mission to lower it as much as possible. His current record, miles ahead of everyone else, is 10 minutes and 11 seconds. His goal is a sub 1010. This is barely on the outskirts of what's humanly possible. For anyone else, a 1009 is unthinkable, but for Jimmy, it's just within reach. It would be his ultimate speedrun. And as he opens up a 1 second lead after Act 3, this run looks like it could have a chance. But after his fastest Act 4 ever, Jimmy is suddenly 2.5 seconds in the lead. And he keeps gaining time, in level after level, with time to save at the end. This is exactly the run Jimmy had been looking for. It's the best pace he's ever had, and the pressure is mounting. But he has to hold it together.
Oh. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car
1007?
insurance by checking Allstate first.
It's gonna get nasty later.
Like, you know to check the weather first, before sailing.
I hate 15-second ads.
I'll go tell the Coast Guard.
So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds.
No, double? Really? Okay.
An unreal world record. After being on the pace of his life, Jimmy had clutched out the ending and broken the 1010 barrier by several seconds. His massive lead had just become even bigger. But what was Jimmy's reaction to this record?
It's done. We killed it.
Jimmy felt that he had killed the game, that the world record was dead. Well, Jimmy's 1007 may have looked unbeatable, but in speedrunning, limits are rarely what they seem to be. And
yeah, I mean, people, they find a way.
Next few years, nobody could have expected. This is the quest to beat Jimmypoopins.
That title. Oh, Jimmy actually helped with the video. That's cool.
And now, a word from this video's sponsor, Disc plate. Disc plates are really cool. They're metal
They look
posters
kinda
that you
cool.
can bounce on your
I've seen
wall
them sponsor other
magnetically
people
in just
before.
20 seconds. No power tools required. You can get gaming brands like Halo, Sonic, and Doom, as well as a variety of other genres you can pick from. Disc plates look great and are far more durable than a normal poster, since they're made from metal. They'll be shipped from Europe and arrive at your doorstep in 4 to 5 days. And if you click my link in the description, you'll get access to a special promotion. 27% off your first 1 to 2 posters, and 37% off if you buy 3 or more. But act soon. This deal is only available for the next 2 weeks. Check out their website and browse what they've got. This plate has a ton to pick from. If you're ready to level up your poster game, click the link in the description. Thanks again to Displate for sponsoring this video. Okay, now why was this run considered to be unbeatable? Well, here's one thing. The final time was 10:07. Jimmy's sum of best was 10:05. Over the entire speedrun, he only lost 2 seconds over his best 7 individual acts added up. In other words, 2 seconds off of a literal perfect speedrun. That is unreal optimization for a game of this length. So, given the strategies he went for, Jimmy
It's crazy
had
that the entire game can be beaten in 10
but
minutes.
how difficult actually were these strategies? Well, they were extremely difficult. Ninja Gaiden 2 is a pretty accessible run for beginners, but it's a really challenging speedrun at the top level. Nearly every act has multiple tough tricks, and we could sit here going over them all. But instead, here are a few of the most brutal. Toward the end of 3-2, you're supposed to walk along the ground, then jump up and climb to move to the next screen. But if you instead hesitate, you can precisely time a jump off of a crescent projectile to land on the wall. Once there, you can repeatedly jump slash to make your way through the wall and hit the screen transition from the other side. This was found by Jorf, Ninja Gaiden 2's second place runner, and saves about a second. Jimmy nailed it in this run. 4-2 has a similar trick. You're supposed to walk on the ground and climb up the wall to continue. But if you do a precise jump off the edge, then jump slash just enough to enter the wall without falling through, you can make it across without having to drop down. This trick was discovered by Gus Mancini and Duckfist, and was one of the hardest in the run. Jimmy only had about a 30% success rate with it. But he went for it in this run, and once again, he nailed it. But the hardest trick in the entire run is on the Act 5 boss, the Ashtar Quick Kill. Several of the boss fights in Ninja Gaiden 2 have quick kills that can save a few seconds. Some of them can be quite tricky, but the Act 5 quick kill is leaps and bounds harder than the rest. There's a brief period where you can damage him before his projectiles come in, during which you cannot damage him. It's possible to just barely kill him before this happens, but your inputs need to be perfect. It involves precisely spacing out firewheel shots while canceling animations so you can shoot again quicker. For years, this trick was thought to be TAS only, but in late 2015, Jimmy was able to pull it off for the first time. And ever since then, because it saved 4.5 seconds, he knew that it was going to be an inevitable trick. Despite a consistency rate of roughly 1 in 4, with a lead of over 2.5 seconds, Jimmy knew he had to go for it in this run. And guess what? He executed it perfectly. So now you can see why this was such an amazing record. But did he make any mistakes? Well, he had one. Here it was. Jimmy was supposed to jump and slash to boost off the enemy, but he missed and had to go up the wall. It cost him 1 second. Beyond that, the only time losses were frames here and there from movement. This one mistake was all that Jimmy had to show for concrete time losses. That's why Jimmy's official run submission said, "Game is dead." That's why his Twitch highlight of the run said, "World record, game is dead." And that's why, upon completion of the run, Jimmy said these words.
It's done. We killed it.
He was 16 seconds ahead of second place, and in full honesty, none of these guys had the skill to beat him. It was a reasonable assumption that, unless Jimmy wanted to play again, his 10:07 wouldn't be beaten. And as the months began to pass, that's exactly what happened. This wasn't the first time Ninja Gaiden 2 had a long-standing record. Back in 2009, Hoda Ruby set a 10:41 that stood for over 3 years.
Wow.
And in 2013, Ohon set a 10:25 that stood for over a year and a half, until it was beaten by the current second place runner, Jorf. So, Ninja Gaiden 2 was no stranger to long-lasting records. But this one was different. Jimmy was so far ahead of the rest that even though the community was active, nobody had any illusions of taking his record. And a great illustration of this is the Ninja Gaiden 2 tournament. In May 2016, Sinister One organized a tournament for Ninja Gaiden 2, featuring most of the game's top runners. Guess who won? Yeah, of course, it was Jimmypoopins.
Yeah, I mean, who else?
But it's not just that he won, it's how he won.
Jimmypoopins has swept the entire top 8 to become the Ninja Gaiden 2 tournament champion. Congratulations to Jimmy.
In the best of 5 finals, he won 3-0, including getting a 10:17 that beat the fastest run anybody else in the world had ever gotten. This man was simply on another level. So, with his run sitting at the top of the leaderboard and nobody else close to him, time began to pass. See, despite his massive skill advantage, Jimmy also had no desire to continue running the game.
Well,
He'd
yeah,
gone
I
through
mean,
one heck of a grind
trying to get
his
those 2
10:07,
seconds?
and now even months
That's
later,
torture.
he didn't want to play anymore. As 2017 came around, his world record remained on top, but other runners did inch a little bit closer.
Yeah?
Gyarados, Arceus, and Envy
Jorf a little
all
bit
moved
further
ahead
down
of
there
Jorf,
now.
although all 3 were still comfortably behind Jimmy. But one runner stood above the rest. He wasn't yet on Jimmy's level, but he was improving rapidly. After a series of PBs in mid-2016, he moved into second place. For the first time ever, someone was putting actual pressure on Jimmy. Meet Beco.
Hey everybody, Tom Segura here. I have been all over on my Come Together tour.
Beco.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's
2
pretty
seconds
close.
away from Jimmy's world record. Who was this guy? How had he gotten so good? Beco is a high-level speedrunner across multiple games. Pretty much any game he touches, he immediately gets a good time in. And his list of world records is impressive. He's held the top spot in Mega Man 4, 5, and 6, and has dominated the leaderboard in other popular games too. He began running Ninja Gaiden 2 right around the time Jimmy got his 10:07, and within weeks, he was in the top 5. After taking a break for a few months, Beco was ready. He was going to make a push for the world record. With his 10:09, he moved within reach, but people had tried and failed to even get close to the 10:07 before. How could he save time over such an optimized run? Well, Beco held 2 distinct advantages over
Find
Jimmy.
a new
The first
trick,
advantage,
right?
Beco was willing and able to go for new, risky strategies.
Yeah. You
Most
just
of
gotta-
them were in Act 7, the last couple levels of the run. In 7-1, it's possible to clip through this wall with slashes, similar to the trick in 4-2.
Yeah.
This had been known for years, but Jimmy found it too risky to go for in his 10:07. Beco committed to going for it, and as a result, was able to save half a second. Another wall flip can be done later in the level, going through this wall rather than having to go down and around. This one is even more valuable, saving
it
about
looks like
1.3 seconds. He also had new strategies on both Jackio 1 and the Act 1 boss, together saving close to 2 seconds. So in combining everything, Beco could potentially save nearly 4 seconds on new strategies alone.
Huh?
But he also had one more distinct advantage over Jimmy. It's one of Ninja Gaiden 2's most beautiful mechanics if performed optimally. It's something that separates the good players from the great players, and Beco was amazing at it. This is wall climbing. In Ninja Gaiden 2, rather than climbing normally, it's faster to ascend a wall by doing a series of small jumps up the side. The inputs to wall jump are quite precise. You jump off the wall with A, up, and right, then move back to the wall quickly with B, up, and left. The shorter length of time you hang off the wall, the more time you save. Ideally, you're only off the wall for 1 or 2 frames before moving back. Beco was super talented at wall climbing, even compared to Jimmy. He was able to both sneak in more wall jumps and perform them more optimally. He only saved fractions of a second in each section, but across the run, his faster movement added up to a couple of seconds. So overall, Beco still had to do the same hard tricks as Jimmy. The Ashtar quick kill, the boosts, and the clips. But the new strategies, combined with faster wall climbing, meant Beco's floor was a lot lower. He could potentially get a run of 10 minutes flat.
Oh.
A year ago, this seemed impossible. Jimmy's 10:07 was unbeatable, and nobody was close to him. But now, reality had set in. Beco had ascended the mountain, and he was in position to take Jimmy's record.
Wow.
And there it is.
No way. Oh my god.
It had happened.
Oh, he's
A
Japanese.
new world
Okay.
record by roughly half a second. Jimmy's 10:07 had lasted for 14 months, much less time than most expected.
Yeah.
So, what did the new record look like? Well, it started by bleeding a bunch of time. Beco accidentally got knocked back in Act 2, and had a slower boss kill. In Act 3, he failed to boost up at the end of 3-2, and once again, lost time on the boss. These mistakes cost him 5 seconds combined. He was way behind Jimmy's 10:07. But then his faster movement started to kick in. He had much quicker wall jumps in Act 4, and cleaned up Jimmy's lone mistake in Act 5. Going into Act 7, his deficit was down to 3 seconds. And that's when his big time saves came into play. The clips, the wall climbing opportunities, the boss kills. When all was said and done, Beco had saved 3.3 seconds in Act 7. Enough to push him in front of the record and achieve a 10:06. While congratulations poured in, Beco wasn't satisfied with this record. He knew he'd bled time early, and in theory, a run down to 10 minutes flat was possible. Both Beco and Jimmy were skilled enough players to take the record there, but Jimmy wasn't interested. His Ninja Gaiden 2 days were behind him, and he was perfectly satisfied with the legacy of his 10:07. Jimmypoopins had retired from Ninja Gaiden 2. But Beco, on the other hand, well, he was just getting started.
Okay. He beat Jimmy, now he's gotta beat himself.
Nice.
My ability is called instant death to any target. If I simply think that I want to kill someone.
After
There it
a
is.
year of grinding, After a constant stream of world records, this was Beco's magnum opus. He had completely taken over the Ninja Gaiden 2 leaderboard. There was still a big gap between Jimmy and the others, but now there was another big gap between Beco and Jimmy. 10 minutes flat was a remarkable run. It was a culmination of all the new tricks and strategies from the past year. He got the new boss
I'm looking at the length of the video,
and his
so
movement was better than ever.
thinking this isn't going to stand either.
Is that even though Beco did so many things well, there were still a number of mistakes. He got knocked back in 3-2, got stuck on the wall in 4-1, and his Jackio 1 kill was a bit slower. With that much time loss, how was the run so fast? Well, during Beco's grind, his sum of best started to plummet. As he implemented small new time saves and his movement became even better, he began to gain time in new places. After months of grinding, Beco's sum of best ultimately settled at a 954. Now, this wasn't realistic for a full game run, but it showed how much the goalposts had moved. And over the past few months, Beco had come to realize that a sub 10 was indeed possible if he could get a nearly perfect run from start to finish.
Yeah?
Despite a huge gap between himself and Jimmy, Beco kept pushing to get the sub 10. He was no longer competing with anybody. He was testing his own limits and challenging himself to take the run under 10 minutes. He just needed to clean up 1 or 2 mistakes. Beco continued playing for weeks, but eventually he fell into a slump. After a series of rapid improvements, suddenly he found himself unable to save any time. It was as if he ran into a wall, and the sub 10 barrier was his limit. So, Beco moved on to other games. The sub 10 would still be there when he was ready. It was time to take a bit of a break. Over the following 6 months, the top 5 remained exactly the same. While players were still running the game, most of them were lower down on the leaderboard. Nobody with a shot at the record. A few months later, things heated up when a new runner, Wang Dao, entered the top 5.
Okay, we got a
He
Chinese
improved
runner.
quickly, getting under 10-15 and then becoming just the 3rd player ever to get a sub 10-10. But he wasn't quite world record capable. His sum of best was just barely below Beco's time. After a long and steady grind, he topped out at a 10:06 in May 2019, still a decent chunk away from the record. Meanwhile, Beco himself seemed to have no desire to return. At this point, a year had passed since his last grind, and through all that time, sub 10 was still sitting right there. The other top players simply weren't capable of getting it. Beco had to be the guy, but he didn't want to play Ninja Gaiden 2, despite being just 1 second away. So if Beco was out, and the rest of the top 5 were out, there was only one hope of getting the sub 10.
Okay, yeah. I thought that's maybe where we were going.
Jimmy hadn't played the game in over 3 years, but in mid-2019, more out of boredom than anything else, he decided to give it another try. He had no aspirations of getting the world record or a sub 10, but with all the new tech and strategies, he did want to beat his legendary 10:07. After years of inactivity, what type of player was Jimmy? Could he still compete with Beco? Well, he knew there was one place where he was definitely outmatched: the wall climbing. Beco had revolutionized the game with his wall climbs, and it helped him pull away from Jimmy back in the day. If Jimmy was serious about lowering his time, he needed to improve his wall climbs. So, he began to drill wall climbing, trying to optimize them and squeeze as much time from them as he could. If Jimmy improved his wall climbing, combined with the new strategies, he knew that the PBs would start to pour in.
It's gonna be close.
Yes!
Alright, well, he beat his old time.
Yes!
Oh, and even better. Now we beat the other guy. Chinese guy.
That's it?
Oh, and now we've tied with the world record.
See if that's faster than Beco's.
I don't think it was. I think it was like
hadn't gone anywhere.
0.6.
This run wasn't the world record, but it was just 4 frames away. Less than 1/10 of a second. It had some slowdowns early, especially in 2-1, but he kept it going through the middle acts, and a solid Act 7 let him pull ahead of his personal best. A few small movement mistakes were all that prevented the sub 10. In the past, Beco's wall climbing separated him from Jimmy, but those days were over. Jimmy had officially caught up, and he was a fraction of a second from getting the first sub 10. Seeing Jimmy get this close, Beco decided he had to come back. So, in the summer of 2019, Beco started up the grind again. For the first time ever, Beco and Jimmy were playing Ninja Gaiden 2 at the same time.
Alright, who's going to get to
sub 10
first?
Was on. Both players were feeling the pressure. This was a milestone that could only be achieved once in the game's history. They played for weeks, and each had their share of promising runs, but the sub 10 still remained elusive. Until finally, on September 7th, 2019, one of them did this.
This fall, indulge in the warm flavors of pumpkin and maple at Paris Baguette.
Yes! 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 Oh my god! Yes!
Way to go, Jimmy.
God.
Even after a 3-year break, Jimmy won the race to sub 10. It took a really clean run from start to finish, with the one strange exception being Act 6. This is usually the easiest act in the game, with 2 easy stages and a simple boss kill. But Jimmy got knocked back in 6-1 and lost his second. Beyond that, the run was fantastic. He picked up time over the record in Acts 2 and 5, and had one of his fastest Act 7s ever to gain 2 more seconds. Now, Beco had put up a good fight. For years, he was completely dominant, but the return of Jimmy was a bit too much to overcome. There was still room to lower the record, but Beco decided to stop his attempts and move on once more.
Okay.
Jimmy had won the battle. He was the first to get the sub 10. But this was just one moment in Ninja Gaiden 2's history. There was still plenty of time left to optimize. For the next year
we
and
still
a
have
half,
almost 20 minutes
the
left.
world record remains stagnant. Beco and Jimmy were satisfied to leave the game alone for a while. Throughout all of 2020, neither of them speedran Ninja Gaiden 2. It takes an enormous effort to lower your time at this level,
Yeah.
and you have to be mentally ready for a long grind. You're probably going to have to play for months, just to have a realistic chance at getting a PB. And it's not like anybody was close to passing them. Beco and Jimmy stood head and shoulders above the rest. During this year and a half, there was practically no movement on the leaderboards. Nobody new entered the top 5, and nobody approached the sub 10 barrier. No, if this record is going to be improved, it had to be either Beco or Jimmy. And sure enough, in early 2021, after a year and a half off, one of them got back to the grind.
Probably Beco. Yeah. Like, why would Jimmy come back?
It had been over a year since Beco had last played the game, and 3 years since he last improved his time. He had some unfinished business to take care of. Beco still had to get his sub 10. His last grind had resulted in failure, as Jimmy beat him to it. Now was his chance to finish the job. He wasn't going to go for many new strategies. There was still time to save around the edges from Jimmy's 959. His movement was good, but there were minor slowdowns that could be optimized, especially in Acts 2 and 4. plus the knockback in Act 6. Without anything new, there was room to pick up at least a couple seconds on the record. On March 4th, 2021, just a few weeks into his grind, Beco had a promising run. Thanks to a beautiful Act 2 and 4, he saved over a second and a half, losing a little in Act 3 due to a missed jump onto the wall. With nearly free time to save in Act 6 from Jimmy's knockback, Beco suddenly had a 2-second lead into Act 7. If he could hold on for one more act, this was gonna be a sub 10. Just weeks into his return, Beco had taken back the world record. A clutch performance from start to finish, and his first world record since February 2018. But still, Beco wasn't quite satisfied. He had that mistake in Act 3 and lost a second over Jimmy's Act 7. There was also a faster strategy he could go for in Act 1. By jumping in a 4-frame window, tapping left for 1 frame, and getting lucky with hit detection, it's possible to quickly grab an extra clone. It's a faster route through the stage, but also allows you to do a faster boss kill. Combined, it can save over a second. Bottom line, there was still room to improve, and Beco wanted to keep going. But by taking the world record, he'd also gotten the attention of someone else.
Jimmy? Yep, of course. Not gonna let it stand.
Dyson have engineered a machine to wash hard floors properly, using clean water.
Having left his record untouched for a year and a half, Jimmy was more motivated than ever. And to force himself to stay motivated, he was going to stream every single day, sick days and holidays included, until setting another personal best. He claimed his goal was beating his own 959, not caring about Beco's 958, but the title was masking his true intentions. Jimmy wanted the world record back. He didn't know how long it would take, but he was going to stream every day until it happened. While Jimmy committed to his daily record attempts, Beco kept playing too. Not every day, but enough to put more pressure on the record. These guys both knew 958 wasn't the game's final resting place. They both wanted to be the one to take it lower. For weeks, Beco and Jimmy grinded the game hard, each having their chances at the record. But ultimately, Beco would be the next one to strike. This run had the 1-second time save in Act 1, and made the frame-perfect jump on the wall in Act 3. It had a chance of being a massive record, with a 2-second lead into Act 7. But he fell down going through the wall in 7-1, got knocked back in 7-2, and had a slower Jackie 03. It finished a 1/10 of a second ahead of the record, but this wasn't the improvement that Beco or Jimmy was looking for.
Not going to be satisfied with that.
Still, if you could get a run back to Act 7, you could save multiple seconds at the end and crush the world record. Both runners continued, hoping to get that ultimate run. And just 3 days later, Beco would get a golden opportunity. He bled a bit of time early. He failed to grab the wall in Act 3 and had small movement time losses elsewhere. But he nailed the Ashtar quit kill, something he'd been doing more often lately, thanks to a new method from Cartina Cal. Jimmy didn't like it as much, but Beco credited it for making him much more consistent. And as he played through Act 7, the time saves continued. Was this the run Beco had been looking for?
Wow. Oh wow, that's a big drop.
This incredible run came just 2 months into Beco and Jimmy's simultaneous grind. Beco got the extra clone in Act 1 and saved 3.5 seconds in Act 7, while the middle acts had only minor time losses. This is exactly the type of run he was going for. Beco was done. And Jimmy, on the other hand, Well, he had yet to beat his 959, despite 60 consecutive days of streaming.
Oh.
3 records in a row from Beco, including a killer 955, while Jimmy was stuck at 959. This record was good enough to make Beco stop playing. There really wasn't much time save left. But Jimmy doubled down. He changed his stream title to reflect his current goal, getting the world record back.
Okay.
He wasn't stopping until he did it, no matter how long it took. May passed without any improvements. Then June passed, and then July. Jimmy had been playing for over 100 consecutive days, and still, he couldn't beat his 959. The situation was getting desperate. He was tired of being in second place. But then, in August, that changed.
Okay.
Oh my god. What is this? What is this? What is this? Is that it? Is that sub 10? And clonk! We did it! We got the sub 10. I don't believe it. What a grind. What a grind. It's done. That was it. We just got a sub 10.
I like this guy's look.
And just
the hat
like
and the
that,
mustache.
Jimmypoopins was kicked out of the top 2. The guy to do it was Arcus, a speedrunning legend. The same man who'd set 16 consecutive Ninja Gaiden 1 world records. It's no surprise that when he put some effort into Ninja Gaiden 2, he was able to ascend to the top of that leaderboard too. And
Makes
after
sense.
a months-long grind, he beat Jimmy by a quarter of a second. Now, in all honesty, these two players weren't on the same level. Arcus' sum of best was 956, slower than the world record, while Jimmy's was in the 940s.
Oh, he's
But
just
by
had
going
some bad
for more
luck.
consistent strategies, Arcus was able to get more runs with a chance
Can't
at
get
sub
that
10.
perfect run.
There was no way he was beating Beco, but a 959 was just within his capabilities. And he got it. Jimmypoopins was now in 3rd place. Well, one thing was clear. This strategy wasn't working for Jimmy. He'd been playing for months straight, and had only moved down on the leaderboard. He was still committed to playing every single day, but maybe he had to rethink his approach. He could stick to more consistent strategies, like Arcus did, and try to whittle his time down that way. But no, that's not who Jimmypoopins is. 5 years ago, when he set his legendary 1007, he did it by going all out, by leaving no stones unturned. So, rather than play it safe, Jimmy decided to do a deep dive into the game. He was going to look for optimizations everywhere he could, a screen-by-screen analysis to save as much time as possible. And the end result, hopefully, would be a new and improved version of Jimmypoopins.
Probably a good idea.
First, Jimmy took another look at his wall climbs. He calculated exactly how many jumps he needed for each section, trying to squeeze out extra ones wherever possible. His goal was to have a game plan every time he had the wall climb. Rather than hoping for the best, he'd say, I need exactly 5 jumps on this wall, 3 on this wall, and 4 on this wall. It helped his consistency, and the extra wall jumps saved time too. He also looked to remove uses of the invincible fire wheel in Acts 4 and 5. This weapon makes you invincible for a short period, helping make sections of the run much easier. But to activate it, you have to stop moving and press up and B, which costs about 2 frames. Avoiding the fire wheel across all of Acts 4 and 5 saves a few tenths of a second, but it does make the stages more difficult. Since Jimmy was going all out, he committed to it, hoping to get that small time save every run. In 3-2, he was going for a new strategy related to the crescent jump. By slowing down with up and B, you can get the crescent guy to wrap to the other side of the screen. You can then boost off of his crescent, making it to the wall much faster than the old crescent boost, and also avoiding any frame perfect or random jumps. And on Jackio 3, Jimmy started using slash cancels, where you end the slash animation early by landing or jumping. By doing this repeatedly, you can get more slashes in and ultimately kill the boss faster. So, after months with no results, Jimmy had a new game plan. This was going to make the run harder as a whole, but it could pay off in the long run. At least nobody could say he wasn't trying. He continued on with his daily grind, and once again, weeks passed without an improvement. But then, on day 183 of the grind,
determination
Jimmy
here.
had this run.
Gotta respect Jimmypoopins. Alright.
Finally.
It wasn't a world record, but it was something. His first improvement in 2 years. Jimmy was back in second place. The run failed to capitalize on some of the big time saves, but had excellent wall climbing and 3 fast Jackio fights. After 6 months of non-stop grinding, Jimmy finally had something to show for it. This run reinvigorated Jimmy. His deep dive had paid off, and he was playing better than ever. If he could clean up a few mistakes, the world record was right around the corner. And a short while later, he got more help courtesy of tool-assisted speedrunners from China. A couple new wall clips. The big one was in 4.2. You have to tap right for only 1 frame, 1/60th of a second, then immediately switch to left. But it allows you to clip through the wall rather than going up and around. Since it saved close to a full second, Jimmy decided to commit to going for it. Things were looking up. Jimmy was playing at his best, and he had new strategies to boot. It was time to make one last push for the world record. His daily streams continued. But the results weren't there. Weeks went by without improvement. And then months. His daily counter was in the 200s. The clip in 4.2 was killing a lot of runs, and he wasn't able to capitalize on the rest. Logic says he probably should have just skipped the 4.2 clip, but he refused. Eventually, the counter passed the 1 year mark, and still, no world record. Jimmy's confidence had plummeted. He was rarely ever on record pace. New strategies and all, he couldn't beat Beco, and he was close to giving up. But on day 407, Jimmy got a glimmer of hope. It was a beautiful pace. He had cleaned up an Act 2 mistake and kept it going through Act 3. He got to the clip in 4.2 and nailed it. This was one of his best paces ever into Ashtar. It would be a good time to get the quick kill.
I've been having that problem where I get a slash instead of a B.
1 damage short, and it cost him 4 seconds. Run over. Right?
Okay.
A miraculous 957. Jimmy had just lowered his PB for the second time in over 400 days. Had he gotten the Ashtar quick kill, he would have crushed the world record.
Yeah.
His grind was finally starting to pay off. Despite it being a very small improvement, Jimmy took a huge leap forward with this run. He had essentially played a better speed run than the world record. Now, he just had to finish the job. The job that started 407 days ago. It was a good-looking run right from the get-go. He kept it close with the record, and was only very slightly behind thanks to a missed boost in 5.2. Then, it was time for Ashtar.
Alright.
Nice.
And as the run progressed, suddenly, it all made sense. This is why Jimmy had been at the grind for well over a year. This is why he refused to budge from his hard strategies. He didn't just want the world record. He wanted the best run he was capable of getting. It was a test of his own limits. And when it was all done, Jimmy didn't know how to react. A 453-day journey had suddenly come to an end. What do you do?
Yeah, there it is. That must feel good.
I don't think I've ever cried on stream before, but I'm at that
You've earned
point.
it.
It only takes 453 days. My new lucky number.
Beco is a great rival, but it wasn't just his quest. It was also Jimmy's quest to beat Jimmypoopins. Thanks for watching.
Well, that was a great video. And yeah, that's the second one I've seen from Summoning Salt, and I think I liked the other one too. I think that actually was I was very unfamiliar to speedrunning when I first watched a Summoning Salt video, and it kind of clued me into some of the appeal. I think, if I recall correctly. So, pretty cool channel. Makes it pretty interesting. What other games has he covered? Mario Kart, Tetris. Looks like a lot of them. Lots of Mario games. Ninja Gaiden. It's probably where we learn more about that other guy, Arctis, with the cool hat. Castlevania. Sonic. Metroid. Super Metroid. I mean, anyone want to request that video? I'd be very happy. A lot about Punch Out to start the channel, it looks like. But not really a huge number of videos, but they're so high quality, and I guess that's why we have almost 2 million subscribers here. Just some like taking something like speedrunning and then just being so good at telling the story. I think that's the appeal here. Just laying it out there, making it interesting, and like I don't even see, like, what was the one that I watched before? Wasn't it like a Pokemon one? That's what I'm really looking for. Was it not Summoning Salt, or am I just blind? Oh no, it was this one. It's right here, right in front of me. Yeah, I am just blind. Okay. And it even still has the bar saying, yes, that is what I watched. But yeah, there we have it. Cool stuff. Definitely a fun video. Not much else to say. Hope you guys liked the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.